Today on Stretch Your Kitchen. Today, the grocery game is no joke. Prices are high and flavorful options are limited. It's time to elevate the classic struggle meal. Just because dinner might start with ramen, beans, or boxed mac and cheese doesn't mean it has to end there. Great meals don't start in the grocery store. They start in your own kitchen. I'm Erica, and I'm on a mission to prove that thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better. Welcome to Stretch Your Kitchen. In my very first episode of Stretch Your Kitchen, I shared that my first job, if you will, out of college was in a Christian school. I worked as a lay missionary teacher, and let me tell you, money was tight. Not just, I can't afford new clothes right now, tight, but I can barely afford to eat, tight. When you're a missionary, you're not exactly dining at five-star restaurants. You're usually living on a very limited budget. And there were plenty of days when the question wasn't, what sounds good for dinner? It was, what do we actually have for dinner? I remember one particular night, I came home from a long day at work, absolutely starving. I opened the cupboards and found the culinary equivalent of a shrug. We had half a sleeve of saltine crackers, one can of cream of mushroom soup, a lonely onion that was clearly having a rough week, and just enough milk to make us wonder if it was still actually milk. Now, most people would look at that collection of ingredients and call it a problem, but missionaries call it dinner. So there I was, standing in my tiny apartment, trying to convince myself that I could definitely make a meal of this. Tonight, I announced dramatically to my husband, I will be preparing creamy onion surprise. The surprise was that I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I chopped the onion, mixed everything together, added a little salt and pepper, and somehow it turned into something resembling a casserole. Was it good? Let's just say hunger is an incredible seasoning. I often say that the best sauce is desperation, and believe me, we were desperate. And honestly, some of those meals, when I think about it, were just downright ridiculous. I became a master of looking at random ingredients and saying, well, these food met each other now, so I guess they're a recipe. But here's the thing. Those struggle meals taught me something very important. They taught me creativity, and they taught me resourcefulness, and they taught me how to look at ingredients for what they could become instead of what they weren't. And years later, even though my circumstances have changed, I still use those lessons every week in my kitchen. And Stretch Your Kitchen might be new, but this concept is old for me. Let me tell you, I know a thing or two about struggle meals. And what I truly know is that struggle meals aren't really about struggling. They're about stretching. They're about making something satisfying from what you already have on hand. They're about saving money. They're about reducing waste. And sometimes discovering a meal your family ends up requesting over and over again. So today, we're talking about elevating the struggle meal. We're taking those humble, budget-friendly classics and giving them a few simple upgrades so they don't just help us survive the week, they become meals we're actually excited to eat. So whether your struggle meal is ramen or grilled cheese or boxed mac and cheese or rice and beans or whatever got you through college, let's just see how we can turn it from making do into making dinner. Let's jump right into today's Kitchen Quest. The Kitchen Quest is where I tackle new topics each week to help you stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and turn what you already have on hand into delicious, flavorful meals. Today, we're talking about struggle meals. A struggle meal is basically something that is typically inexpensive and built from pantry staples, uses ingredients that are already on hand, and requires very minimal cooking skills. They're designed to feed people on a tight budget. Today, when people hear the phrase struggle meal, they usually think about college students living on ramen noodles or someone trying to make it to payday with whatever's left in the pantry. But before you turn off this episode thinking that it's all about surviving on instant noodles and ketchup packets, hear me out. Have you ever stood in front of your refrigerator and thought, well, this is what I'm working with? Maybe it's the week before payday. Maybe you're in college. Maybe you've had an unexpected car repair. Maybe groceries have simply become so expensive that you're trying to stretch every dollar as far as it will go. For generations, people have relied on what we now call struggle meals. They're simple, they're inexpensive dishes built from whatever was available. College students mastered them. Young families, particularly with children, survived on them. Grandparents perfected them. And if we're being honest, most of us have eaten plenty of them. But here's what I want to challenge today. What if a struggle meal isn't something to be embarrassed about? What if a struggle meal is actually one of the smartest meals you can make? Today, I'm talking about how to elevate the struggle meal, taking simple and economical ingredients and turning them into meals that are delicious and satisfying and worthy of becoming part of your regular meal rotation. Because Stretch Your Kitchen isn't about deprivation. It's about creativity. I think struggle meals actually get a bad rap. You see, historically, struggle meals have existed everywhere. Italian peasants transformed stale bread into a panzanella salad. And I love a panzanella salad, but it was a peasant food. French families created soups and casseroles from scraps. Depression-era cooks turned flour and potatoes and beans and maybe whatever vegetables they had on hand into filling meals. The struggle meal isn't a modern invention. It was a survival skill. And in today's economy, let's face it, it's a skill worth revisiting. The phrase struggle meal does sound sad. Struggle meal. It sounds like something you'd rather forget than celebrate. But when I hear the words struggle meal, I don't think about failure. I think about resilience and ingenuity. I think about people looking into a nearly empty refrigerator and somehow managing to create dinner anyway. And if we're being honest, most of us have been there. Maybe you were a college student trying to make $20 last until next Friday. Or maybe you have been newly married and trying to furnish a house, pay bills, and buy groceries all at the same time. Maybe you were raising children during a season when every dollar already had 3 jobs assigned to it before it even hit your bank account. Or maybe you're just human and you're experiencing the pinch right now that so many people are. Because let's face it, groceries are not getting cheaper. Sometimes stretching your kitchen isn't a cute little challenge. It's a necessity. But here's what fascinates me. Many of the foods we celebrate today started out as struggle meals. Pizza was a peasant food. French onion soup was a peasant food. Pasta e fagioli was a peasant food. Bread pudding was a way to avoid wasting stale bread. Fried rice was created because someone refused to throw away yesterday's rice. Why would they? Some of the world's most beloved dishes were born from people asking a very simple question. What can I make with what I already have on hand? And that's the exact question we ask every week on Stretch Your Kitchen because the least expensive meal you can create is the one that's already in your kitchen. I think back to my own life and I can immediately remember meals that would absolutely qualify as struggle meals, particularly when I had young children or when I was a missionary. You know the kind, you open the pantry and you find maybe half a box of pasta or one can of tomatoes or a little bit of cheese or maybe an onion rolling around in the bottom of the drawer. And somehow that becomes dinner. At the time, it doesn't even feel creative because it feels necessary. But years later, those meals often become the meals that we remember, not because they were fancy, but because they were real, because they represented making the best of what was available. And honestly, that is one of the most valuable kitchen skills you can develop. Not following a recipe, not owning expensive equipment, and not buying exotic ingredients, but the ability to cook what you have and build a meal from it. That is confidence in the kitchen, and that is the foundation of creative cooking. So let's take a few moments to explore some stereotypical struggle meals and think about ways that we can reduce the stigma and create something delicious. Let's start with perhaps the most famous struggle meal in America. And that meal has probably put more college students through school than any scholarship program ever could. That meal is ramen noodles. I think ramen gets unfairly dismissed. People treat it like it's somehow beneath them. But if you ever had a chance to travel to Japan, ramen is an art form. It's an art form even here in Hawaii. Entire restaurants are devoted to perfecting the broth and the noodles and the toppings and the presentation. So maybe the problem isn't ramen. Maybe the problem is that we stopped at a seasoning packet. And how can something with a seasoning packet that costs a mere 50 cents be something delicious? Well, let me tell you, underneath that little package of noodles is an incredible foundation. Think about it. For less than $1, you've got a base for vegetables and proteins and herbs and spices and sauces and leftovers. The next time you make ramen, imagine you're building a bowl rather than preparing a package. You can throw in leftover rotisserie chicken, for example, or use that one remaining carrot in the vegetable drawer. You can add a bit of bok choy or celery or cabbage or spinach that's beginning to wilt. What about a little drizzle of sesame oil or a splash of soy sauce? A hit of pepper sauce like gochujang or sriracha. And my absolute favorite, create a hard-boiled egg and marinate it in shoyu or soy sauce. Suddenly, you've gone from struggle meal to comfort food deliciousness. Even one of my absolute favorite chefs in the world, Alex Guarnaschelli, she did a segment on the kitchen about elevating the basic ramen noodle pack. She started with that basic 50-cent pack, and she is an iron chef. If it's good enough for Alex, it's good enough for me. So yes, ramen noodles are an amazing struggle meal that's easily elevated into something delicious for an entire family. And here is a Stretch Your Kitchen tip. Save your leftover vegetables throughout the week. A few mushrooms here, a half a carrot, a handful of spinach. Ramen noodles are the perfect clean out the fridge meal. You see, a basic package of ramen noodles can be the foundation for using up so many odds and ends. That minimizes food waste. And isn't that one of the missions of Stretch Your Kitchen? We're not pretending we're eating something else, but we're making what we have taste as good as possible while stretching our grocery dollars and minimizing food waste. I hope that mission resonates with you. So let's talk about another struggle meal, buttered noodles. Buttered noodles. Yep, that's it. Buttered noodles. They're simple, they're cheap, they're comforting, but they're often mocked. I mean, who wants buttered noodles for dinner, right? Well, elevate it. You can upgrade those buttered noodles with browned butter. Suddenly you have brown butter noodles and a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Maybe just some lemon zest or garlic or fresh herbs. You could also add maybe a few frozen peas or white beans or spinach, and suddenly the meal has protein, fiber, and flavor. You see, buttered noodles, they are an excellent vehicle for leftovers too. Any tiny amount of protein or vegetables will disappear beautifully into a dish of buttered noodles, and suddenly that dish is a meal. Now, if there were a hall of fame for struggle meals, I think rice and beans would be inducted on the very first ballot. My parents basically survived on rice and beans for a number of years prior to finishing college and establishing themselves in their careers. If you asked anyone to name one struggle meal, I bet you 7 out of 10 people would name rice and beans. It's universal. This meal exists all over the world. Red beans and rice in Louisiana, rice and black beans throughout the Caribbean, moros y cristianos in Cuba, various rice and lentil dishes across India and the Middle East. Why? Because generations before us figured out something very important. Rice and beans are affordable, and they're filling, and they store well. And here is one of the best attributes. Together, rice and beans create a complete protein. You see, people weren't making rice and beans because it was trendy. They were making it because it worked. And honestly, it still works today. The mistake people make is treating rice and beans as if they're boring. Rice and beans aren't boring. Under-seasoned rice and beans are boring. The fix isn't spending more money. The fix is using flavor. A little squeeze of lime, some fresh herbs, particularly if you're already growing them, maybe some garlic or a little hot sauce or a spoonful of salsa, a handful of feta cheese, or any leftover meat you have on hand. Suddenly, the entire meal changes. Think fried rice. I honestly think fried rice deserves an award for food waste prevention because fried rice has one simple rule. Use anything you've got. That's it. That's it. Leftover vegetables, perfect. Tiny amounts of chicken, throw them in. Half an onion, use it. A handful of peas, excellent. One scrambled egg, even better. Fried rice is basically a refrigerator rescue mission. And what's amazing is that nobody at the dinner table feels like they're eating leftovers. They're just eating fried rice. It's one of the greatest examples of kitchen transformation. The ingredients stay the same, but the experience becomes something entirely different because it's all a variation of a simple struggle meal, rice and beans, but it's elevated. I actually want to spend a little extra time on rice and beans because it is a struggle meal that is so versatile. You can choose a flavor direction, like Mexican, just throw in some lime, cilantro, and salsa. Or Cajun, add some bell peppers, onions, and maybe some Creole seasoning. What about Mediterranean? Throw in some olive oil and feta and cucumber and lemon. You could make it Asian inspired with soy sauce and ginger and sesame oil and sesame seeds, but it's one
base meal and just then four completely different experiences. And here's a stretch your kitchen tip. If possible, use dry beans and cook them in a slow cooker because the savings are dramatic if you're really in a position where you need to stretch those grocery dollars. Rice and beans is an unbeatable way to do so. Another struggle meal is grilled cheese, the simple grilled cheese sandwich. Grilled cheese is perhaps the ultimate comfort food struggle meal. Who doesn't love a grilled cheese sandwich? Bread, cheese, done. But you can elevate it. You can add tomato slices or caramelized onions or leftover roasted vegetables or ham or bacon or maybe a little pesto or some pickles or pair it with some homemade tomato soup. And now you've got a cafe style meal for a fraction of the cost. Let's think about another struggle meal. Baked potatoes. Potatoes may be one of the most economical foods on earth. One large baking potato costs about $2 here in Hawaii, but only about $1.20 on the mainland. And that's for a large baking potato, which can feed more than one person, especially when elevated with ingredients that you already have on hand. Even better, use potatoes from a larger bag for even more savings, and then elevate it. Bake a potato and top it with maybe chili or broccoli and cheese or leftover taco meat or beans or leftover vegetables. Think of potatoes as a canvas, not a side dish. One large baked potato can become an entire dinner. Perhaps one of my favorite struggle meals involves mac and cheese. Mac and cheese has probably carried more people through tough times than almost any other meal. College students, young families, newlyweds, retirees on fixed income, and just about anyone trying to stretch a grocery budget has relied on that small, maybe blue box that used to cost 25 cents and might cost about 75 cents nowadays, but still a very inexpensive struggle meal. Or perhaps you make a homemade version from pantry staples. And honestly, there is no shame in macaroni and cheese being the foundation of a struggle meal. It checks a lot of boxes. It's inexpensive, it's filling, it's comforting, it's kid-friendly, and it uses ingredients that most of us already have on hand. But sometimes it can feel a little one note, particularly the boxed version. The good news is that mac and cheese is one of the easiest struggle meals to elevate without spending much money. So let's talk about some mac and cheese upgrades. First, maybe add a protein. If you're feeding a family, a little protein can transform mac and cheese from a side dish into a dinner. Some budget-friendly options might be leftover ham or even canned tuna or shredded chicken or ground beef. What about crumbled breakfast sausage in mac and cheese or black beans or white beans? One of my favorites is diced ham mixed into mac and cheese with a little frozen broccoli. Suddenly, you've got a complete meal instead of just a bowl of noodles and cheese. Another great idea is to sneak in those leftover vegetables because mac and cheese is basically a blank canvas. Maybe try adding some frozen peas or some broccoli or some spinach or roasted cauliflower or sauteed mushrooms or diced tomatoes. Not only do vegetables stretch the meal further, but they also add texture. A few pantry staples can make boxed mac and cheese taste surprisingly homemade. Try adding garlic powder or onion powder or smoked paprika or Dijon mustard. It changes the flavor. It's delicious. Maybe some hot sauce or ranch seasoning or Cajun seasoning. Even just 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard to a boxed macaroni and cheese makes the cheese flavor pop without making the dish taste mustardy. It's kind of like giving mac and cheese a personality. Another thing you can do is add crunch. One thing mac and cheese does lack is texture. So take a boxed mac and cheese and try topping it with toasted breadcrumbs or crushed crackers or crispy onions or crushed potato chips, maybe toasted panko. If you've got leftovers, spread them in a baking dish, add some mac and cheese on top, and then add a crunchy topping and bake until golden. Suddenly, your struggle meal has become a casserole. And casseroles sound like you had a plan all along. So, one of my favorite stretch your kitchen tricks is to use ingredients that I already have on hand to give a classic dish like a boxed mac and cheese a flavor direction. Think Southwest mac and cheese. Just add some black beans, some corn, some taco seasoning, and maybe a little salsa to the same boxed mac and cheese that costs less than $1. You can make buffalo mac and cheese. Add a little shredded chicken, some buffalo sauce, or some green onions. Or Cajun mac and cheese with some sausage and bell peppers and Cajun seasoning. Or listen to this one, pizza mac and cheese. Add some pepperoni, some Italian seasoning, and a little extra mozzarella cheese. Yum. And then I'm sure we've all heard of bacon cheeseburger macaroni. Just add ground beef, a little bit of diced pickles, and some onion powder. Again, the same basic boxed mac and cheese, a struggle meal, but a completely different dinner. It's all about seeing more possibilities in the ingredients that you already have on hand. Struggle meals do get a bad rap, but they truly are a way to stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and serve up delicious food for you and your family. So I think it's time that we dive into today's culinary concern.
The weekly culinary concern allows me the opportunity to answer your questions and share more ways to help you stretch your kitchen. If you're feeling inspired, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Visit stretchyourkitchen.com and please follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Stretch Your Kitchen for more tips, tools, and helpful takeaways to minimize waste and maximize flavor.
Today's culinary concern centers around the idea that struggle meals just get a bad rap. Some people might think, I feel bad serving struggle meals to my family. Maybe you've thought to yourself, struggle meals feel cheap. Won't my family get tired of eating cheap meals? Well, only if they taste cheap. The secret isn't spending more money. More money doesn't give more flavors. The secret is creating contrast. Contrast in texture and flavor and acidity and freshness. A squeeze of lemon here, a sprinkle of herbs, a crunchy topping, a dollop of sauce. These tiny additions create meals that feel intentional and satisfying. Many restaurant dishes are simply elevated versions of these simple, humble struggle meals. Did you know that many restaurants today have embraced the whole elevated comfort food and nostalgic dining vibe? They're taking classic struggle meals and transforming them into trendy, high-priced menu items. Think gourmet mac and cheese. What started as an inexpensive pantry meal is now a restaurant staple. Restaurants simply upgrade them with things like truffles, truffle mac and cheese, or tiny bits of lobster, lobster mac and cheese, or maybe changing up the cheese like smoked Gouda and bacon mac and cheese, or 4-cheese baked mac and cheese with crispy breadcrumbs. The funny part? Restaurants are charging $18 to $30 for something many of us survived on for less than $1 a serving. What about grilled cheese? The classic, there's not much in the fridge meal. Well, guess what? It's gone upscale. Some restaurant upgrades include brie and apple grilled cheese, or short rib grilled cheese, or 3-cheese artisan grilled cheese, or grilled cheese paired with tomato bisque. Sound familiar? Well, someone just discovered that putting fancy cheese on a bread makes people feel sophisticated. Even rice and beans are served in restaurants. It's a staple in cultures around the world, but restaurants have upgraded it. We now call them grain bowls, or burrito bowls, or rice bowls with specialty sauces, or global fusion bowls. Restaurants market them as bowls, and suddenly they're trendy. And perhaps the king of all struggle foods, the potato, we now have loaded baked potatoes and truffle fries and smashed potatoes. And there are even potato flights. But potatoes remain one of the cheapest foods in the grocery store. Yet restaurants continue to build entire menu items around them. You see, restaurant diners are increasingly looking for foods that feel familiar and nostalgic and satisfying rather than overly complicated. That's why meatloaf is back, pot pies are back, mac and cheese is everywhere. Biscuits and gravy are a trendy breakfast. Fried bologna sandwiches even appear on some menus. And deviled eggs, the simple, basic deviled eggs, has become an expensive appetizer because restaurants have realized something that many home cooks already know, and I hope you know it. Simple food is not inferior food. One of the reasons I don't apologize for serving struggle meals is because restaurants are not apologizing for serving them either. In fact, they're charging $20 to $30 a plate. It's still mac and cheese. It's still potatoes. The difference isn't the foundation, it's the upgrades. It's elevating the struggle meal. So whether money is extremely tight for you, which it is for so many people right now, or whether you're just on a mission to stretch your grocery dollars, never hesitate to serve a struggle meal. Struggle meals are delicious. Struggle meals are satisfying. And struggle meals are truly a way to stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and serve up delicious meals for you and your family. So let's head into today's Triple T takeaway.
Each week, I'll leave you with my Triple T takeaway. That's tips, tools, or tasks to begin implementing the Stretch Your Kitchen lifestyle. These simple takeaways prove that thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better.
The difference between a struggle meal and a beloved family recipe is often just time, creativity, and a willingness to see possibility where others see limitation. So the next time you're staring at a package of ramen or a bag of rice or a few potatoes or some leftover noodles, don't ask, is this enough? Ask, how can I elevate it? If there is one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this: never apologize for a struggle meal. A struggle meal represents resourcefulness. It represents adaptability. It represents making something from almost nothing. And frankly, those skills are worth celebrating. Because that's what Stretch Your Kitchen is all about. Making the most of what you have, wasting less, spending less, and creating meals that bring people to the table with a smile. Great meals don't start in the grocery store. They start in your own kitchen. Struggle meals are the foundation of Stretch Your Kitchen. Maybe they're born from necessity, or maybe just a desire to do better and spend less. And with a little creativity, they can become meals you gladly make even when money isn't tight. This week, I ask you, choose one basic struggle meal and elevate it. Trust me, you and your family will appreciate the nostalgic comfort of simple mac and cheese turned fabulous, or a basic ramen turned into a crafted bowl using items you already have on hand. You will save money and you will waste less, and you will create a delicious, satisfying meal. That's all for this week's episode of Stretch Your Kitchen. Next week, we are ditching the store-bought salad dressings and whipping up homemade flavor. I'll share ways to create satisfying salad dressings that stretch your grocery dollars, minimize food waste, and makes every summer salad taste like a restaurant-quality meal.
Thank you for listening to Stretch Your Kitchen. If you enjoyed this episode or feel that it would be useful to someone else, please leave a review on Podchaser and follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Stretch Your Kitchen. And remember, thoughtful cooking isn't about buying more, but about using better.